Hey guys, what's up? I'm Noah, this is Analog Resurgence, and today I'm taking a look at a roll of Fuji's C200 35mm color negative film. Fuji C200 film is a color negative 35mm film available from Fujifilm, and it's also one of Fuji's consumer grade films. Now in the past I've taken a look at some of the other consumer grade 35mm films that are available for you guys to pick up really cheaply and really easily a lot of the time, and these are films like Kodak Gold 200, Kodak Ultramax 400, Kodak Color Plus 200, and Fuji Superia 400 as well. And as a bit of a refresher, consumer grade films are films that are usually relatively cheap in comparison to some of the more pro films. They're also film that you can usually find a little more easily, usually in like drugstores, depending of course entirely on where you live and kind of what's available to you. So ultimately, consumer grade film is stuff that is cheap, easy to find, and is reliable enough to kind of give you more or less decent looking results in just a wide variety of situations and in a variety of cameras. So consumer film is important, and that means the more of it that exists out there also relates to the amount of people who are going to invest the time and the money into getting into film photography and learning more about it. So C200 has a 200 ISO, which again is kind of a medium speed for film. It's a medium amount of light sensitivity, which means that you can get away with taking a lot of pictures indoor, especially with flash, and especially outside in bright sunny areas, but also in more subdued lighting like overcast days or shady areas. 200 and 400 are really the main kind of ISO options for consumer film that exists. Now in the past, Fuji made Superia color negative in ISO 200, 400, and 800. But now 200 and 800 Superia has been discontinued, which leaves Fuji's C200 as the only 200 ISO Fuji-made consumer film out there. So I picked up a roll of this stuff and threw it into an Olympus point-and-shoot camera here, which is all automatic and just easy to load and easy to use. And point-and-shoot cameras in general are kind of what a lot of people have when you're using consumer-grade film. But that's not to say that people aren't also using it in even higher-end situations with SLRs and experimenting even more with it. So let's take a look at some of my examples and experience with shooting C200. So C200 does have kind of what I consider to be a bit of a classic Fuji look to it when it comes to shooting their film. Really, it loves the greens in its images, and the greens really pop more so than a lot of the other colors. So it's kind of more weighted towards that side of things when you're looking at like a variety of tones and colors and subjects in your image. But I also find for Fuji stuff specifically that it does somehow also lean heavy into the magentas as well. So if I'm looking at like a lot of these shots, then it's really like the magenta and just the warmer tones that really seep into a lot of this stuff and gives kind of a color cast to things. Especially in like the brighter shots and like the brighter areas of your image, you can get kind of a bit of like magenta tones that kind of leak into areas where there shouldn't necessarily be magenta a lot of the time. So it's really noticeable in a lot of the sky shots here for like the clouds, where the clouds are maybe a little too red or pink when they should really just be white. And also green shadows and underexposed areas that really become green as well. So it's not always the best for things like high contrast situations because of how it dips into greens when dealing with a variety of tones and just lighting situations. And automatic cameras really are just trying to judge the scene overall, so you're not necessarily gonna get like really consistently good shadow detail if you're shooting contrasty scenes like these. The biggest surprise for me on this roll though is that I took it out when there was a lot of snow here in Toronto a few weeks ago, and all of those shots look surprisingly good, especially in terms of like color and just how realistic everything looks and how it's so balanced. Like the colors feel the most even of all the shots on the roll when I'm looking at these shots with the snow in them. And this is really because like the snow is a perfect color kind of reference because you know it should be white and consistent, and so there's not really like a lot of kind of color cast or colors that are leaking into the snow off of the areas around it. And taking a look at a little bit of just some basic skin tones, you can see that like people are looking pretty red a lot of the time, and I found that also with Superia 400 as well. And just Fuji stuff and skin tones aren't always the greatest mix, but you can get some decent looking stuff as well. But overall I do find some of this stuff to be just a little too red and it feels a little unnatural. And because C200 is pretty cheap and it's not like a super high-end film or like really aimed for like professional usage, I do find it to be pretty grainy for a 200 ISO film. Like there's definitely some 200 ISO stuff out there that has finer grain or just a smoother, sharper look to it as well. But really for the price, I mean, it's not too much of an issue. Now again, taking a quick look at some of the Superior 400 stuff that I've shot in the past, there's just a lot of similarities between just kind of how these images feel when you compare them to C200 shots as well. So things like the greens and magentas that kind of dominate the images a little bit more, and also just kind of the green shadows or the underexposed areas that quickly kind of dip to like a grosser kind of green muddy look, are just kind of things that I see a lot on Fuji made film stocks. If we look at Kodak consumer film like Color Plus 200 and Ultramax 400, which I've done in the past, things are kind of warmer overall, but maybe just a little bit better balanced sometimes. I was actually pretty surprised by how much I liked Ultramax 400, and I found that like the images have like a nice balance across them in terms of like color. So I'm not necessarily blown away by C200 or Fuji stuff in general, but that's just kind of my own personal preference. I like a lot of Kodak stuff much more than Fuji stuff. And if you want to see more of these examples off of this roll and just all the other rolls from all the different roll review videos that I'm doing now and in the future, then all that stuff is available over on the Analog Resurgence Patreon, and there's a link in the description if you want to head over there and check that out and consider supporting the channel as well. So if you're picking up some Fuji C200 stuff to shoot in your 35mm cameras, you can get this stuff in both single rolls and triple packs as well, which is pretty common for just consumer films in general. A lot of this stuff can be found and bought in triple packs. And especially looking around at some places online, C200 is some of the cheapest 35mm color film out there that you can get. But of course that might kind of vary based on where you are and kind of what's available to you. But ultimately, if you're not a huge fan of like Fujifilm and the characteristics that kind of go along with shooting their types of film, and especially if you're not necessarily blown away by the results of Superior 400, then C200 is maybe not gonna change your world. Hey, thank you guys so much for watching, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And in the comments, you can always let me know about your own kind of specific experiences with C200 and just like the Fuji stuff in general, kind of what you think, or if you've had drastically different results than I have as well. And if you guys have any sort of suggestions for stuff that you want to see me shoot and kind of show off and talk about more in the future on the channel, then you can comment down below on these videos and let me know what you guys want to see in the future. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon. Hey, it's time for the Patreon shout out to all the incredible people who helped to support the channel over the last month. So an incredibly special thank you to Chris Rasmussen, Carson Fuller, Vayark, David Piranelli, Marco Temperini, Chaz Alling, Colin Jackson, Alex Onken, Balasso Su, Bearded, Ian Farber, Benjamin MacArthur, Bingling Zhu, Taylor Cusella, Giuliano LaPedalina, Derek Konigsberg, Jeremy Lee Camp, Caesar, Nakia Jones, Paul Wagner, Garuv Pai, Dan Gross, Futigue, Ramblings from Canada, Abby Henderson, Todd Barton, and Henry and Megan. And an extra special shout out to Chris Rasmussen, Carson Fuller, Vayark, and David Piranelli, who provided some extra amount of support to the channel in the past month on the Patreon. Every little bit of that stuff does really help out in supporting the channel and allowing me to do more of this stuff and keep doing this stuff in the future.